Right now, I do want to take you back to some breaking news that we are following at this hour as we take a look at this post coming in. This is from the Associated Press. You can see there on your screen, breaking: new prosecutor dismisses charges against President Donald Trump and others in Georgia election interference case. Again, this is just one of the criminal cases against President Donald Trump where those charges have been dropped here. The prosecutor recently took over that interference case against Trump and others, saying in a court filing today that he has decided not to pursue the case any further. The executive director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia took over the case last month from Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis, who was removed over a, quote, appearance of impropriety created by a romantic relationship with the special prosecutor that she chose to lead the case.
Hey guys, it's Adam is here. This is bad. This is really, really bad for Donald Trump because his own legal team, the very people paid millions to keep him out of handcuffs, just handed prosecutors the easiest conviction of their careers.
Donald Trump's legal team said Monday that the Justice Department's efforts to prevent the former president from publicly sharing evidence in the federal case against him violates his free speech rights. This was in response to a protective order filed on Friday by special counsel Jack Smith, which would limit what Trump and his legal team can do with the evidence shared with them. The former president was charged with 4 crimes in connection with his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election result. Prosecutors cited a post Trump made on his social media platform Truth Social, which read, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." Prosecutors wrote that similar posts by Trump could have a harmful, chilling effect on witnesses. Lawyers representing Trump instead asked the judge to keep only a limited amount of evidence from public view. Trump's lawyer John Lauro criticized the order Sunday on Face the Nation.
We're all in favor of protecting sensitive and highly sensitive information, but it's unprecedented to have all information hidden in a criminal case, including, by the way, information that might be exculpatory and might be exonerative of President Trump.
And we're not talking about some minor slip-up, not a typo, not a missed deadline. This is a full-blown legal catastrophe where Trump's attorneys filed an official court document that was supposed to get charges dismissed, and instead they accidentally confessed to the prosecution's entire case. You heard that right.
A Georgia prosecutor officially dropped the historic racketeering case against President Trump and others for attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election.
Trump's own lawyers put it in writing, signed it, filed it with the court, and then watched as the judge read their words back to them in open court and said, "Thanks for making my job easy." They admitted Trump personally made those phone calls to election officials.
It's just not possible to have lost Georgia. It's not possible. When I heard it was close, I said, there's no way. But they dropped a lot of votes in there late at night. You know that, Brett. And that's what we are working on very, very stringently. But regardless of those votes, with all of it being said, we lost by essentially 11,000 votes. And we have many more votes already calculated and certified to. So I just don't know, Mark, I don't know what's the purpose. I won't give Dominion a pass because we found too many bad things, but
they admitted he knew every state had already certified their results. They admitted he made specific fraud claims that he knew were false. 14 separate factual concessions buried in a motion that was supposed to help him. And now those admissions are binding. They're on the record, and prosecutors are going to use every single one of them to nail Trump to the wall. Here's how this disaster unfolded. Around January 27, 2026, Trump's legal team filed what was supposed to be a routine motion to dismiss certain charges. Standard stuff in any criminal case. You argue the prosecution doesn't have enough evidence. You argue your client didn't do what they're accused of. You try to get the whole thing thrown out before trial. Except Trump's lawyers apparently forgot to read their own filing before sending it, because buried across multiple pages, they made 14 separate factual admissions that basically confessed to everything prosecutors needed to prove. They admitted Trump personally participated in phone calls with election officials in Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. They admitted he made specific public statements claiming hundreds of thousands of fraudulent votes changed the outcome. They admitted he knew states had officially certified their election results. And prosecutors? They saw this filing and probably had to step outside to laugh, because in one document, Trump's lawyers did what prosecutors would have spent months trying to prove. They eliminated the need for dozens of witnesses. They eliminated the need for endless document reviews. They basically said, you know what? Don't worry about proving any of this. We'll just admit it for you. And then came the hearing. Judge Reynolds, the presiding judge, she read these admissions out loud in court. She went through the filing page by page and said to Trump's lawyers, "Your own motion acknowledges your client personally made these calls. Your motion admits he knew about the certifications. Your motion concedes he made false fraud claims." And then she dropped the hammer. These admissions eliminate several defenses you were planning to use. We're going to hold you to them at trial. Motion to dismiss? Denied. Can you imagine being Trump's lawyer in that moment? Sitting there while a judge reads your own words back to you as evidence against your client? Watching years of legal strategy collapse because someone on your team couldn't be bothered to review a filing before sending it? This wasn't just a mistake. This was legal malpractice in real time. And the worst part? They can't take it back. Once you admit facts in a signed court filing, those facts are established. If Trump's lawyers try to argue at trial, well, he didn't really know about the certifications. Prosecutors are going to pull out this motion and say, really? Because your own document says otherwise. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? Either way, Trump loses. Let's talk about exactly what Trump's lawyers admitted because the details are absolutely devastating. First, they admitted Trump personally made those phone calls to election officials, not his staff, not his lawyers. Trump himself. We're talking Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, the states where Trump pressured officials to change results or refuse certification. And we already know what those calls sounded like. We've all heard the Georgia tape where Trump tells Brad Raffensperger, "I just need you to find 11,780 votes." We know Trump threatened them, pressured them, told them there would be consequences if they didn't cooperate, and now his own lawyers have admitted he made those calls. So prosecutors don't have to prove it anymore. No need for phone records, no need for witness testimony. Trump's team already confirmed it. Done. Fact established. Second, they admitted Trump made specific public statements claiming hundreds of thousands of fraudulent votes in certain states, and that those votes changed the outcome. This is buried around page 23 of the filing. And it's a killer because Trump's whole defense has always been, I was just asking questions. I had legitimate concerns. I was listening to my advisors. But this admission says no. Trump made specific numerical claims. He said hundreds of thousands of votes were fraudulent. He said those votes flipped the election. And we know those claims were false because his own Attorney General, Bill Barr, told him there was no widespread fraud. Because dozens of courts, including judges Trump appointed, rejected his fraud claims. Because election officials in both parties certified the results as fair. So Trump wasn't asking questions. He was making false statements. Specific, provably false statements. And his lawyers just admitted he made them. Third, they admitted Trump knew states had officially certified their results. This is the dagger because one of Trump's potential defenses was, I didn't understand the certification process. I thought it was just a formality. But his own lawyers just said no. He knew. He knew the states had certified. He knew the Electoral College had voted. He knew the official process was complete. And he tried to overturn it anyway. That's not confusion. That's not misunderstanding. That's knowingly trying to obstruct an official proceeding. And that's a crime. These admissions also destroy Trump's ability to claim he was just relying on his lawyers. Advice of counsel is a common defense. You say, I did what I did because my attorneys told me it was legal. But that only works if you were actually following their advice, not if you were telling them what to do. And based on what Trump's team just admitted, Trump was in charge. He made the calls. He made the public statements. He pushed the scheme. So the advice of counsel defense? Gone. Erased. Trump's lawyers just eliminated it with their own filing. Now let's talk about what this means for the trial. In most criminal cases, there are factual disputes. The prosecution says the defendant did X. The defense says no, they didn't. And the jury decides who to believe. But when the defense admits the facts in a signed court filing, those disputes vanish. So at Trump's trial, the jury isn't going to spend days hearing testimony about whether Trump made those phone calls. They're not going to debate whether he knew about the certifications. They're not going to argue about whether he made false fraud claims, because Trump's lawyers already admitted all of it. The trial skips past the facts and goes straight to the question of intent. Did Trump know what he was doing was wrong? Did he have criminal intent? And that's a much harder case for Trump to win, because once everyone agrees he made the calls, knew about the certifications, and made false statements, what's the innocent explanation? There isn't one. The only logical conclusion is Trump was trying to steal an election he knew he lost, and prosecutors are going to hammer that home. This also destroys Trump's political narrative. He spent years telling his supporters, "I won that election. It was stolen from me. I was fighting for the truth." But these admissions say something different. They say Trump knew he lost. He knew the certifications were official. He knew his fraud claims were false. And he tried to overturn the results anyway. That's not a victim fighting for truth. That's someone trying to steal an election through lies and pressure. And when this goes to trial, when prosecutors present these admissions to a jury, when the verdict comes back, Trump's political narrative collapses. Because it's one thing to claim the election was stolen when there's ambiguity. But when your own lawyers admit the facts, when a jury hears those admissions and convicts you, there's no ambiguity left. You're just a criminal who tried to steal an election. And this isn't happening in a vacuum. This is part of a pattern of Trump's legal team making catastrophic mistakes. They've missed deadlines. They've filed motions that got laughed out of court. They've made arguments judges called frivolous. And now they've handed prosecutors a roadmap to conviction. It raises serious questions about Trump's legal strategy. He's always surrounded himself with yes men, with people who tell him what he wants to hear instead of what he needs to hear. That works in politics. But in court? In court, you need competent lawyers who don't make stupid mistakes that destroy your case. And Trump's lawyers just proved they're not up to the task. Prosecutors are probably laughing right now because they were preparing for a long, difficult trial. They were getting ready to call dozens of witnesses, introduce hundreds of documents, spend weeks proving Trump personally made those calls. But now they don't have to. Trump's lawyers admitted it all, so prosecutors can streamline their case. They can focus on the evidence that shows Trump's intent, his motive, his consciousness of guilt. And that makes conviction far more likely because the hardest part of any criminal case is proving what the defendant knew and when they knew it. But Trump's lawyers just eliminated that problem. They admitted Trump knew. They admitted he was personally involved. They admitted he made false statements. So prosecutors don't have to prove those things. They're already established facts. Judge Reynolds made it clear these admissions are binding. They're on the record. And when this case goes to trial, those admissions are going to be front and center. Prosecutors will reference them in opening statements. They'll cite them during witness examinations. They'll remind the jury over and over, Trump's own lawyers admitted these facts. So there's no debate, no question, no reasonable doubt. And Trump is stuck with it because you can't fire your lawyers mid-trial and claim they were incompetent. You own your lawyer's mistakes. And this mistake, this catastrophic case-ending mistake, Trump is going to own it all the way to a verdict. This also impacts Trump's ability to appeal if he's convicted. Appeals are usually based on legal errors or insufficient evidence. But if Trump's own lawyers admitted all the key facts, it's really hard to argue on appeal that the evidence was insufficient. You can't say the prosecution didn't prove Trump made those calls when your own filing admitted it. So if Trump gets convicted, that verdict is probably going to stick. And for Trump's legal team, this disaster is going to haunt them for the rest of their careers. This isn't some minor mistake that only legal nerds care about. This is a catastrophic error that's going to be taught in law schools as an example of what not to do. Lawyers will study this case and ask, how did Trump's team make admissions that destroyed their own defense? What were they thinking? The answer is probably they weren't thinking. They were rushed or careless or incompetent. and now it's going to define their careers. This whole mess shows how Trump's approach to everything, politics, business, the law, is the same. He surrounds himself with yes men. He demands loyalty over competence. He punishes anyone who tells him the truth. And eventually, that catches up with him. In politics, you can sometimes get away with that. But in court, you can't win on loyalty. You win by having competent lawyers who understand the law, who make smart strategic decisions, who don't hand the other side everything they need to convict you. And Trump doesn't have that. He has lawyers who just made one of the biggest unforced errors in legal history. So what happens next? This case is moving toward trial. And when it does, prosecutors are going to use these admissions to build a devastating case. They're going to show the jury that Trump's own lawyers admitted these facts, so you don't have to take our word for it. Trump's team agrees he did it, and then the jury is going to convict him. Because once the facts are established, once everyone agrees on what happened, the only question is it a crime? And the answer, based on the evidence, is yes. Trump knew he lost. He knew the certifications were official. He knew his fraud claims were false. And he tried to overturn the election anyway. That's obstruction. That's criminal. And thanks to his own lawyers, the prosecution can prove it. This was a disaster. A complete, total, self-inflicted disaster. And Trump is stuck with the consequences.